Hello everyone from Tav News JNC, Jewish News Channel. I'm Zאגא and I'm glad to be here with you. Today we'll deal with the moral question accompanying the war in Gaza. We'll do this with Professor Amihud Amir from Bar Ilan University, Israel. Hello, Professor.
Shalom, Mr. Zאגא. Always nice to talk to you.
First of all, I want to ask you, Professor, how is your family these days?
My family is more or less a cut of all the families in Israel. Two of my sons-in-law are in the army, and one daughter is also doing reserve duty. My wife, who is the deputy director of the emergency department at Schneider Children's Medical Center, has spent already 2 weeks in Eilat, where they have 60,000 dislocated people, evacuated people in a city of 50,000. So obviously the infrastructure is very stretched thin, and my wife was sent by her hospital to also open up a clinic, a pediatric clinic in Eilat, as well as help out the hospital, Yosef Tal in Eilat, for a multiple casualty incidents.
Professor, does the American public understand that a danger from Hamas is a global danger for America no less than for Israel?
I don't think they understand because the United States feels very safe and secure and insular. After 9/11, they probably should not feel as safe and secure, but 9/11 was a long time ago, and they don't feel the threat. Hamas does not make any secret of its goals, and it may very well attack on other countries' soil if it's possible for it. But I think there's also another problem that people are not aware of, is that, and the United States is helping it, both in the college campuses with all the various demonstrations that are going on, and that is that if it becomes acceptable to actually do inhuman atrocities in the name of some cause, then it may be other groups with other causes who may say, well, this is great, we can also do the same thing, and they can do it everywhere in the world. So there are two types of dangers from these incidents of Hamas. One of them is Hamas itself, but the other one is the question how the world reacts to it, and if the reaction is not very forceful and very unequivocal, then it may very well be that other groups with other causes are going to resort to atrocities as well, because they say, well, this is okay, it's accepted, everybody loves it.
What do you think, Professor, about the claims of a humanitarian crisis in Gaza?
There may be a humanitarian crisis in Gaza, but the question is, whose fault is it? For example, here in Israel, the Hamas has been throwing rockets at civilian populations for years, and we could have had huge humanitarian crises with multiple thousands of deaths even before the situation now, because they actually shot thousands of rockets. Every rocket like that could have killed dozens of people. So what does the government do? The government cares for its citizens. So it operates on a number of levels. It develops technology to stop those rockets, Iron Shield in this particular case, and it builds shelters. Right now, part of the building codes in Israel for every building is to actually have a shelter in the house built to make it a lot more safe for the population, so there will be no humanitarian crisis. Now, in Gaza itself, you have a government, incidentally voted by 70% of the people in Gaza, so they actually love their government, but a government who does not care about its people and puts it in harm's way. We now know that they put missiles in schools, in Boy Scout buildings, in civilian buildings, in hospitals. They have headquarters in hospitals and under hospitals. They have munition dumps in mosques and hospitals. So they actually use their population as human shield to protect them against the enemy. This itself is a huge humanitarian problem. Anyone who does that, anyone who doesn't respect enemy population is usually accused of not being humanitarian enough. But people who do that to their own people, I shudder to think how we should treat them. So yes, there is probably a huge humanitarian crisis in Gaza, but it's actually instigated, fostered, and planned by the leadership of Gaza. I mean, Israel, for example, opened humanitarian corridor for people to leave the war area and to go south where there is less danger of war. I mean, obviously, the Israeli government evacuated many people from the war zone and put them in hotels and takes care of them, which is what my wife is doing in Eilat now, for example. But not only does Hamas not care about its population, but it doesn't want it to evacuate. It doesn't let it go down on the humanitarian path to go down south, but it actually bombs them and impedes them from going down. So yes, there may be a humanitarian crisis in Gaza, but the people who cause this humanitarian crisis are the Hamas, who actually have no respect for any life, civil or otherwise, not for any life of the enemy, and not for their own life either. The amazing thing is that many people, not all, but many people in Gaza actually still support their leadership, even when they know that their leadership puts them in harm's way and uses them as shields for its own.
People talk about a proportional response in the war against Hamas. How do you respond to this claim?
When you talk about proportional response, you are on the legal playing field, which is something you know about more than me. But when a judge is taking care of, when a judge is presented by a case, then he should give a proportional punishment to the type of thing that a person did. It shouldn't be like Jean Valjean, who stole bread and then was thrown in jail for the entire life, but or you can't give a death punishment for someone who parked in his neighbor's parking lot. So that would be disproportional. So the entire concept of a proportional response is a judicial concept. But what we're doing here is not a judicial concept. Israel is not trying to punish Hamas. This is not the object. I will give an example of what's going on here. Suppose one day you find that a venomous snake came into your house and bit your child, and the child died. So what is the response that you're going to do? You're not going to say, okay, let me judge this snake for killing my child, and okay, I'm going to now kill the snake's child, so it will be proportional. That would be maybe what you do if you're judging the snake, but you're not. In this particular case, you're saying, I need to care for the safety of my family. I have more children. I don't want them to be bitten by snakes. And therefore, I'm going to find where the snake came from, and I'm going to find the snake's nest, and I'm going to make sure that I eradicate the snake's nest. So there are no snakes at all. Even if there are 10,000 snakes, and there was only one snake who bit my one child, but these 10,000 snakes are a danger to my other two children, let's say, then I'm going to kill the 10,000 snakes because I don't want them to bite my child. So it's not a punishment. We're not punishing Hamas. We are making sure these are not going to be beheaded, that no one is going to come in the future, take a baby, put it in an oven, and turn it on and burn the baby to death. That no one is going to see a pregnant woman and slit her stomach while she's still alive. That no one is going to rape young women and kill them. That no one is going to torture Holocaust survivors. We want to make sure that this doesn't happen. We're not punishing the people who did it. We are making sure that our citizens, our children, our babies, our young women, our old women, our men and women can all live in safety. And as long as there is a snake's nest right there next door who is going to continue to try to do the same thing, and we know that they continue to try to do the same thing because it wasn't an aberration. We now know that this was part of the plan. The plans they got was to do this, was to take half-year-old babies hostages. This was the plan. So such atrocities are what they plan in the past and what they will plan in the future. And therefore, what we're having now is a war for the safety of the citizens of Israel, for the existence of the state of Israel. It's a defensive war, and in a defensive war, when you go after the snakes, you have to kill all the snakes. It's not a question of proportional response. The only possible response is to get rid of the threat and to bring safety again to our citizens.
As for Shifa Hospital in Gaza, everyone knows that the Hamas headquarters is underneath this hospital. Do you think the IDF is allowed to bomb this hospital with reference to Article 19 of the Geneva Convention?
So, the Geneva Convention actually comes to describe what type of behavior is acceptable in war. Now, war is not humanitarian because in war, killing soldiers is allowed. I mean, soldiers are fighting, and no one is going to say you're not allowed to kill enemy soldiers. And so the Geneva Convention does not regard that at all. The Geneva Convention deals with what happens with non-combatants. And there is nothing more non-combatant, there's nothing more peaceful than a hospital or a mosque or a school. These are very peaceful things. And so the Geneva Convention says you cannot target them. However, the Geneva Convention is talking about targeting enemy structures that are non-combatant. And so they say if there's a structure there that is totally peaceful, the enemy army is not using it, you cannot use it as a target for your military. On the other hand, it is quite clear, and the Geneva Convention understands, that for sure it's not allowed that one's own army is going to target its own hospitals. But this is what Hamas is doing. And so Hamas is actually using their own hospitals as military bases, thinking that that will give them carte blanche to do whatever they want. So they are actually endangering their own, the sick people, their own civilians, by using hospitals, mosques, and schools as military bases. Article 19 of the Geneva Convention addresses that and says, if the enemy couldn't care less about its own civilians and puts them in harm's way, then you should not have your soldiers die because the enemy is willing to have its citizens die. That does not work. And so Article 19 says that even a hospital, if it is used in a military capacity, which is clearly the case now, it is documented, it is known. Shifa Hospital is used as a military installation. If a hospital is used as a military installation, then the opposite army should give notice and give them time to leave. In this particular case, they were given more than enough time. They had 2 weeks to evacuate that hospital, if not more. And if within that time the enemy does not, or the owner of the hospital does not evacuate it, at that point the hospital loses its position, its sacred position as a civilian installation, and it is now defined as a military installation and can be attacked according to the Geneva Convention. So it's not a question of my morals or your morals or anybody else's morals. Maybe Gandhi would say, I would rather die than do anything else. But that is not what the morality of the world is about. And the Geneva Convention, which defines the morality of war, allows you to bomb that hospital. Israel is now entitled to bomb everything north of the line that was cut by the IDF in Gaza. Everything north of that has had 3 weeks to evacuate if they didn't, and everything that is used in a military capacity is now fair game and can be used morally, can be bombed, can be attacked, and there should be no moral compunctions. In fact, I would say it would probably be immoral for the Israeli chief of staff to say, I'm going to sacrifice my own soldiers and let them die because Hamas wants his citizens to die.
I want to thank you, Professor.
Thank you very much. And
thank you all for being with us. Remember, Tav News is the right channels for all lovers of Israel. See you in the next programs. Bye.